Where's Baddog? Are we live? I think Baddog popped out for a minute, but we're excited to be here.
There we go.
What's going on, Baddog?
What's going on? Is that the longest minute ever, or what?
It felt like
Music was cool.
I was popping my head during the intro. I was popping.
That had to be the longest 2 minutes in the history of. And I did pop myself out because I had two screens open, and I was like, I got to pop out. And then I think I took the one that I was actually in, and I had to go back in and do it. Anyway, welcome aboard the first edition of Giants Collective. You know me. I'm Baddog. I'm the guy that absolutely hates the Philadelphia Eagles. But I'm very excited to be a part of this roundtable. I think this is going to kick some serious ass without question. You got four great Giants fans here, very passionate Giants fans, know their stuff. You can follow them all over social media. They're just going to go around, introduce yourself. You can let them know where to find you. And we'll start over here to my, I guess this is my right on camera or left or whatever it is. Anthony, go ahead.
I'm Anthony Rivardo, Fireside Giants. I'm really happy to be a part of this with some of the best Giants content creators, the best of the best right here on the Giants Collective. Super excited to be a part of this. Looking forward to talking Giants every single week, and it's going to be a lot of fun. Even though this team isn't necessarily a lot of fun to watch, I think we'll have a lot of fun talking about it.
I think so too. Down there, Adriana, go right ahead.
I'm a New York Giants fangirl, for those of you who don't follow along on all the social channels. And I feel the same way as these guys, excited to be a part of it. You know, we've been talking Giants all year long, and now we just get to do it as a group. So I'm excited and just hope that maybe the Giants can start winning the games so we have something better to talk about.
Yeah, that'd be great. And then, of course, the Entertainah.
Excited to be doing this. Obviously, Baddog and me have been working together for a long time. I've gotten to pop on Anthony's channel a number of times. Him and Alex, two great guys. They got a great channel over there. We got to speak with Adriana last week or the week before, whenever it was. When we got to talk Giants football, seems super knowledgeable, super passionate. So I'm always for it, man. Whenever you can get together with a group of Giants fans and talk about the team that we love, you know, we may not always agree, but, you know, we're going to have a lot of fun. So looking forward to this channel, looking forward to talking Giants and dissecting this team week to week.
Absolutely. And it's also nice to have other shoulders to cry on instead of crying in our beer or soup or whatever your preference is. Obviously, guys, we have a huge game against, like I said, the team that I probably hate with every fiber of my being, more hatred towards this team than any team in professional sports. That includes the Red Sox. Go Yankees, by the way. Go Mets.
Go Mets. Don't forget about my Mets.
It makes me sick just to mention the Eagles. Like, I physically get sick talking about the Eagles. Obviously, old friend Saquon Barkley is visiting MetLife Stadium this week. And what I wanted to do is get your thoughts, because obviously, Chris and you and I have talked about this, but I have not heard from Anthony or Adriana their thoughts. You guys watched Hard Knocks, I'm sure. Mm-hmm. And obviously, there's a lot of controversy about, whoa, Joe Shane can't let Saquon. How are you going to pay Daniel Jones and not pay Saquon Barkley? And, what are you doing here and everything else? What were your thoughts? I'll start with you, Adriana. What was your thought about him letting Saquon Barkley walk? Do you think it was the right move? Do you think he made a mistake? How did you feel about the whole situation and the way it went down?
I'm Team Joe Shane on this. I think it was 100% the right move. They offered him multiple deals before that. I understand he's a good player. He's a good running back. The Giants needed so much help this offseason and for the last couple of years that we're not in a position, and we weren't in a position to pay a running back $13 million a year. And someone who's also injury prone at that. And we've seen from other teams, Isaiah Pacheco is a perfect example of this. You do not need to pay a running back that much money. Also, look at Derrick Henry, who is getting paid $8 million a year, and he is destroying other running backs. Like, it's unbelievable. Yeah. So I was on board with letting Saquon go. I said, if they want to pay him a reasonable amount, it's not my money. I don't care. I felt the same way about the Jones contract. It's not my money. You pay him whatever. But I was not one of those fans. And the people who followed me back then, you guys know, I was on board with him moving on. I think it was the right choice. I stand by it then, and I stand by it now. And honestly, I don't really miss him. And I think the Giants fans that are crying about him not being a fan are dumb, honestly.
Mic drop.
I'm so done with this.
I'm going to tell you what, Adriana. After the last couple of weeks of watching Tyrone Tracy, I forgot about Saquon Barkley. Yes. I'm completely fine with that's not the problem with this team right now. I'm sure we'll get into that throughout the course of the stream. But the running backs seem to be just fine for me. We got a nice little committee brewing with some young guys, so not too worried about it. But yeah, some great points, Adriana.
Anthony, what did you feel about the whole Saquon Barkley thing?
Yeah, I was all for letting him walk. I thought it was best for both parties, for the Giants to go in a new direction. Tyrone Tracy is an example. Like, I think I saw a stat today, correct me if I'm wrong, Tyrone Tracy has more yards through the first 2 games of his career than Saquon Barkley did, rushing and receiving combined. So that shows you the impact right there that he's made, or as a starter, not through the first 2 games, but as a starter. That shows you the impact that he's made. And then it also just highlights once again, which we've seen numerous examples of across the league, you can find value at the running back position in the later rounds. And a lot of those guys plug and play. And also the tread on their tires is something to take note of. Saquon Barkley, a lot of injuries. You don't know when that decline is going to happen. So I thought it was best for both parties because Saquon also, I think, could use a change of scenery, a new environment. Giants fans and the discussions around Saquon Barkley got very toxic over the last couple of years. So for him to be thriving elsewhere, I hate that it's in Philly. You never want to see one of your best players go to a rival, especially Philly. I'm with you, Bad Dog. I absolutely hate Philly. That is like a piece of me dies. A piece of me dies every time we lose to that team. So there's Giants fans that want to tank the season, whatever. No, beat Philly. That's first and foremost. Got to beat Philly. But I was all for it. And I think, again, Tyrone Tracy is really talented, young kid. Devin Singletary's been great as well in the few games that he started. I like what we have in our running back room.
Yeah. I agree.
Love it.
Chris, how do you feel about Saquon Barkley? Well, we've talked. Yeah, go ahead. I'll
talk about it. I mean, I pretty much agree for the most part of what both of them said. We weren't in a play. I've said it several times. Like I've said, like Saquon Barkley for what he got paid makes sense in a certain circumstance, such as the Philadelphia Eagles, a team that's in a Super Bowl window, a team that's equipped to support him and maximize him at that position. But the way I look at Saquon Barkley, kind of like what Anthony was saying, he's older. He plays a position that, historically speaking, falls off a cliff by the age of 29. There's been several studies on it. There's exceptions to the rule, like a guy like Adrian Peterson. Barkley's had an injury history. Didn't make a whole lot of sense. It would have been putting like rims on a Toyota Prius because that was what the Giants roster was. That's the way I look at the running back position. It's flashy. It's that finishing touch. It makes your car look nicer. If I don't own the Toyota Prius, I'd downgrade the hubcaps. I'd save up my money a little bit more so I could get myself an Escalade. The Eagles have an Escalade, so they said, let's put the rims on the Escalade. So for them, it made a lot more sense. For the New York Giants, didn't make any sense. You can't pay a running back that kind of money. And I think it shows that Joe Shane, and I'm not saying he's been perfect. He hasn't been, but he has a clear plan. He has a clear vision. He's not going to be willing to overspend at positions that he feels don't warrant long-term commitments, such as the running back and such as we saw with the safety, who's off to a great start this year with the Packers with Xavier McKinney. But he puts certain value on certain positions. You've seen him spend a boatload in free agency and in terms of high draft capital in the draft on the offensive and defensive line. That's where he believes a roster is built, and he's not going to overspend on a running back, especially one that's 27. I was always of the belief that you should have extended Barkley had he stayed healthy early on in his career, because that's what teams do when they have elite running backs. They extend them when they're 24, 25, 3 years into their career. But when he's 27, coming off the injuries that he has and the state of this franchise, didn't make any sense. And as far as this week goes, I hope we kick his ass. I got nothing more to say about it than that. And I don't really miss him. I loved him as a Giant, but I don't really miss him because I think we're just fine at that position.
Yeah, I know. Well, listen, we're 4 Italians. I'm sure one of us knows a cement boot maker. Makes some cement boots for Saquon, I'm sure. Listen, I've always been a proponent. Chris is a big offensive line guy, and obviously the game is still won in the trenches. I've been saying all offseason that you have to put the money in front of the quarterback, not behind the quarterback. As good as Saquon Barkley was here, and I don't know how many times I've had to say this, like till I'm blue in the face as my hat. Barkley was here for years. We didn't win any football games. He didn't win any football games. It would have been no different this year because that money would not have been in the offensive line, which is much better now. And teams could have still stuffed the box and stopped Saquon Barkley and said, hey, let your rag arm quarterback beat you. They don't do that anymore. It's a little bit different now. Like Chris said, you can't put rims on a Prius. And like Adriana said, you're winning Super Bowls with guys like Isaac Pacheco. You don't need a running back. The position is not what it was 30 years ago. These are not the Emmitt Smith days. They're not the Barry Sanders days. They're not even the Marshall Faulk days. You don't need a running back to win a title. It is a luxury position. Lord knows the Giants are not in any luxury to sign positions. The teams are built from the inside out, which is the trenches, and you work your way back. The running back is the last person in the backfield. The safety is the last person on defense. You can't start there and build in. That's what Dave Gettleman was doing for years, and that's why this didn't work. Our offensive line gave up 85 sacks last year, the second most in NFL history. So I completely understand Joe Shane saying we're not going to sign you, hit the free agent market, because like Adriana said, they also tried to sign him a couple of times. And I will tell you this, and I know this for a fact, had Barkley signed the contract, we don't have Daniel Jones because they would have tagged Jones and moved on.
Yeah.
But they got stuck in a bad spot because they couldn't tag them both. They were coming off a playoff win. They were in no position to draft a quarterback, and we're in the situation that we're in. So that sucks. But I completely agree with Joe Shane. And like Chris said, I am ready to kick his ass. What do you guys feel about Saquon coming back? How do you feel the perception will be? You think he's going to get cheered? Do you think they're going to boo the hell out of him? Anthony, you start.
He'll probably get booed just because he went to Philly, and that's totally deserved. If he went to the Chargers or some other random team across the NFL, I don't think anybody would care, but he went to Philly, and we all hate the Eagles. We hate the Eagles fans even, just the Eagles. Everything about them sucks, and we hate it.
Anthony. Let's call a spade a spade.
It is, yeah, call a spade a spade.
Disgusting football team.
Yeah, I totally agreed. All right, so if I were at the game, I won't be at the game, but if I were at the game, I would boo.
Yeah. I'll boo from right down here. Adriana, how do you feel they're going to treat them when they come back?
100% going to get booed. And I saw that report from, I think, Jordan Renan today that Saquon was like, maybe I'm naive, but I think that everyone's over it. I'm like, honey. Girl,
yeah, you're right.
But you still don't get it. That's what it proves to me, that you still don't get that you went to our most hated rival of all rivals. Yes, we hate the Cowboys. I don't even hate the Commanders. I could give two shits about them. If you went to the Commanders, I don't even think anyone would care. But I'm like, you literally went to the team that every single one of us hates the most. You think you were going to walk into MetLife Stadium and people are just going to be like, quiet? Like, you obviously didn't learn shit while you were here for 5-6 years. Stupid.
Yeah.
Chris.
I don't think the whole stadium is gonna boo him, but yeah, I think there's gonna be more boos than cheers. And I laughed too, like Adriana said, when I saw Jordan Renan's tweet. I almost read that like, is Jordan Renan like trying to soften the blow with Barkley to try to, like, everybody knows he's gonna get booed. You don't leave the Giants. It's not just that he went to the Eagles. It's what he did the whole time he was here. Oh, I love the Giants. Oh, I want to spend my whole career as a Giant. Oh, I'm Mr. Giant.
I want to be in the Ring of Honor. I want to have my number retired.
Is that the other thing? And I get it, and I love him. I loved him when he was a Giant. He's everything you wanted a Giants player. He represented the team great both on and off the field. I get it. It was great with the media. I get it. But at the end of the day, if you're going to be Mr. Giant, and then when you become a free agent and you go out and you have your pick of the litter who to play for, and you go out of your way to play for the Philadelphia Eagles, of course we're going to boo you. You look like a hypocrite. You're playing for our biggest rival. And of course he's going to get booed. He's going to get booed as soon as they announce his name before the game starts and throughout the game.
Yeah, and that jersey looks like shit anyway. It's a terrible looking jersey. It's not even the good old Eagles jersey. It's an ugly ass bird, booger colored, vomit colored jerseys. He looks like crap in that green. He looks terrible. It don't look right on him. I'm sorry. It don't look right on him at all. And yes, listen, I have some coworkers that are going to the game. My buddy said I'd pour a beer on his ass. And I said, don't waste that $15. Man, he ain't worth $15. Don't waste your beer on Saquon.
Don't stoop to the Eagles level.
He was. Yeah, he was kidding around. I guess he knows he get thrown out of the stadium. You do that.
That's true, yeah.
But yeah, don't. Well, listen, man. Eagle fans are a totally different breed. I always say, in order to be an Eagles fan, I think their prerequisite is your IQ needs to be less than 80, and you need to, have about the same amount of wits as a doorknob or a potato, because that's where they are. Some of these Eagle fans, I swear to God, they're potatoes. I don't.
We also what the fans did after they won a Super Bowl. They literally ate horse shit. So that's
I mean, they're, like you said, Chris, it's a gross, disgusting city. It's a hideous city. It's a hideous team, hideous jerseys. I hate everything about it. I hate Sirianni and his punching.
That's the guy I hate the most.
Yes.
Nick Sirianni. There's nobody I hate more in the NFL than Nick Sirianni. I still can't get over the face, guys. During the playoff game against the New York Giants, when the camera came to him, when they were up by like 17 points,
Yes.
I wanted to jump on that into my TV and punch him in the face. I can't stand Nick Sirianni. Can't stand him.
Yeah, listen.
My favorite thing is I'm seeing Eagles fans now, like on my For You page on TikTok. It's all Eagles fans freaking out, and they're like, Nick Sirianni has to go. He's ruining this football team, like literally having meltdowns. But I saw someone being like, I can't believe this is what Sirianni has turned into. He's better than this. This isn't who he is. And I was like, dude, I literally commented on the videos and was like, where were you guys during the 2022 playoff game? It was very obvious that A, he's a raging asshole, and B, Jalen Hurts literally hates him. We saw this 2 years ago. You guys are just figuring it out. Like, get with the program.
Listen, there's something to be said about a guy that is an Italian guy that eats pizza. That's first and foremost. And I bet he puts pineapple on it too. You don't put pineapple on your pizza, and you certainly don't eat pizza. And I guarantee he does both. I guarantee.
Oh, he came out. He came out and said he loves Pizza Hut, right? Sirianni.
Yeah,
yeah.
Clown. The guy stalks ass. But let's now that we've gotten that, now that we've got the shit out of the way, literally. It's with Saquon and the Eagles. Let's talk about something that really, really is shitty for us. And obviously, the news came out yesterday that we're probably not going to have Andrew Thomas for the rest of the year. The hits just keep on coming, guys. We lose Malik Nabers to a couple weeks for a concussion. We lose Andrew Thomas. It always seems like it's our best players that get knocked around here. I mean, it was Barkley for many years for us. It's Daniel Jones. It's like the most impactful players on the team. Can't seem to stay healthy. And Andrew Thomas now, he missed a lot of time with the hamstring last year. He's probably going to miss the rest of the year this year. They're calling it the Liz Frank injury, which took Phil Simms out in 1990 when the Giants went on to win the Super Bowl. That was the thing that ended his season that year. None of you are old enough to remember that. I am, because I'm the old guy in the room. But I wanted to get your thoughts on what do you do at left tackle? Because we were kind of discussing this a little bit earlier before we went live. Chris, we'll start with you this time. What would you like to do at left tackle?
Well, it looks like what they're going to do is they're going to start Azudu, at least to start. And we'll see, if that continues. But I know in training camp, from what I remember reading, they were keeping Neal on the right side. So they kind of went into the year with that plan. I think Azudu, most of us agree that was originally drafted to be a guard. He'd probably be better suited to play guard. And not only now are you playing him at tackle, you're playing him at the blind side protector. And I think this speaks more towards the limitations of Evan Neal than anything else. The fact that this guy was the 7th overall pick. He's only been in the league for 2 years. He couldn't crack the starting lineup this year. You had to go out and spend a boatload in free agency to try to patchwork that offensive line, which they've done a tremendous job as far as that goes. Jermaine Illuminor has been great. Runyon's been solid. Shane did a great job in free agency there. But the fact that when Andrew Thomas goes down, Evan Neal is remaining on the bench. Evan Neal's not getting an opportunity to play, and you're starting a guy that you drafted in the 3rd round of that same draft who was intended to play guard at the blindside protector on the left side. It speaks volumes to how low they feel about Evan Neal. And you can't use the excuse that, oh, well, they don't want to screw him up because, oh, they want him to stay on the right side because that's where they intend to play him. What are you going to get rid of Jermaine Illuminor the way the guy's playing? So that's not an excuse to me. So to me, it really hammers home how low they are on Evan Neal at this point. And he's probably not long to be a Giant, much longer past next year, is the final year of his rookie contract. So that stands out to me. I was hoping, and I get the argument against it. I'm sure you guys will talk about it. But I was hoping they put Illuminor to the left side, and I understand the disruption, the chemistry he's built on the other side, on the right side. You don't want to disrupt that. I get that. But the left side, man, the blind side protector, that's so important. And I get scared to death after watching Azudu play last year on the left side in a limited capacity of what that means, whoever is playing the quarterback position for the New York Giants. So it's a big hit for the Giants. That you could argue. And I don't even think it's an argument. I think it's a fact. Most teams you would say the quarterback. And I'm not trying to rag on Daniel Jones. But if we lost Daniel Jones, I think he's a little bit better than the alternative on our roster. But if you lose Andrew Thomas, that is the biggest hit on this team. We saw it last year. The Giants went from a bad offensive line to one of the worst offensive lines in league history in a single season because he missed half the year. So without him in the lineup, unless Brasillo is a magician, this could be a disaster for the New York Giants for the last 11 games.
Yeah, without question. Chris, do you have Justin Pugh's phone number? You give our good friend Justin a call?
Get him off the couch.
Come off the couch.
Yeah.
Anthony, what are your thoughts on the left tackle position?
One thing that this is going to affect that might be overlooked from a lot of Giants fans is that the tight ends are now going to be even less involved in the offense. Last year, we had a lot of problems on the offensive line, and there were a lot of Giants fans questioning what happened to Daniel Bellinger. He had a promising rookie season, and then last year he was pretty much uninvolved, and all of the tight ends really were uninvolved. Darren Waller as well. I almost forgot that he even was a Giant. That was so short-lived. But now we're talking about having a blind side with Josh Azidu protecting it. How do you make sure that he can be a capable force over on that side of the line? You're going to have to chip block. So you're going to be putting tight ends over there and helping him out. And I thought that Theo Johnson started to look better in recent weeks, started to make some decent plays, started to get downfield and get some receptions. Now he's going to be less involved in the receiving game because he's going to be blocking more often than not. So that also sucks. And that's like a hidden element that maybe a lot of Giants fans don't initially look at. The conversation about the offensive tackles and who should play where is also interesting. But I'm very curious to see how it affects the passing game and how the tight ends are going to be less involved. But in terms of Jermaine Illuminor, I agree with keeping him at right tackle. I think it's important to keep the continuity across the offensive line and the chemistry. And then on top of that, there is something to be said about he's finally comfortable here at right tackle. He's bounced around the offensive line a lot in his career. He's played some guard. He has played a little bit of left tackle, and he finally found a home last year at right tackle. And he kind of signed with this team to play right tackle. And the way that he's playing, not saying that he's a selfish player or anything, but if it were me and I were in his shoes, I am far exceeding the expectations of the contract that I just signed to play at right tackle. I want to keep playing right tackle so at that next deal, I get paid handsomely as a right tackle. So, and then if he switches over to the left side of the line, well, now it's uncharted territory all over again. What if he doesn't play as well? Then all that extra value that he added on top of his contract, it starts to diminish. And that makes his next contract maybe worth a little bit less. So that's also something that I think might be in the back of the mind of a guy like Jermaine Illuminor. But at the end of the day, I know whatever the Giants ask him to do, the way that he's demonstrated his character to be, he'll do whatever they ask of him. But I think there are a few reasons kind of hidden that he should stay at right tackle, that being one of them.
And that's a great point you brought up, Anthony. I didn't mean to cut you off, Baddog, but I was just thinking about that as you said it. When you look around the league in today's NFL, it used to be that the left tackles would get paid a lot more than the right tackle. It's not really that way anymore. So it's not – left tackles certainly get paid a bit more, but it's not as big of a gap as it used to be because defenses, they shift their best pass rushers from side to side. So it's not he has a lot to lose. That's a good point you brought up because if he goes to the left side, he's a free agent soon and he struggles. All of a sudden, all this good capital that he's built with this team, looking as strong as he has at his natural position, he loses a lot of value in free agency. So that's a really good point that I didn't even think about. From his perspective, yeah, there's no way he's going to want to move.
Yeah, I mean, guards are getting $100 million. They're getting
Yeah.
$20 million a year. And to Anthony's point, I was just going to think maybe Jermaine Illuminor, or maybe the Giants end up signing him to the big deal, depending on how much money they have. Adriana, what's your take on the left tackle position, and how would you go about it?
If I'm Joe Shane, I'm taking the L and I'm calling David Bakhtiari. This team is still in it. They're still going to play Jones. So if he's the best option at quarterback and you have an opportunity to play a division rival who is clearly struggling on Sunday, a 1:00 game at home, it is a winnable game. You beat the Eagles. You're 3-4. You're right back in the mix again. You cannot say, well, it's too bad. I drafted Joshua Zudu. We've got a new offensive line coach. I know he's a guard, but we're going to force him to be a left tackle, even though he sucks. And he's one of the reasons why Daniel Jones tore his ACL last year and got sacked 80 times.
Yep.
Like you just have to suck it up. And this is my only real problem that I have with Joe Shane is this is now the second year in a row that we do not have a swing tackle. And you're relying on Evan Neal and Joshua Zudu, who have proven to be bad football players in a position that is seriously dangerous to a quarterback with an injury clause. And whether they decide to bench Daniel Jones, which they're not going to do, and let's say they just put in Drew Lock, you forget about the injury clause for 1 second, you are still have an opportunity to be in the mix to win games this season and to even go for the division if they can get it together. I just don't think it's a good idea and it's a smart idea to say we're just going to force two of our very not good players to be a good player on Sunday when we've seen what they're capable of. I don't care what Carmen Brasillo can do. He can do a good job. We've seen what he's done with these guys. He is not going to turn a god-awful Evan Neal into a fucking superstar. He's just not. He's not a magician. Like, it drives me insane that, again, the second year in a row, we are dealing with the same problem and you're forcing square pegs into round holes. It's not going to work.
Yeah, I think the Giants are in a very weird spot. You look at the Giants, we're 2-4. We could be 5-1. I mean, we've been in every one of these games outside of the Minnesota game. We don't have and it's weird. Again, maybe it's just me and it's my fandom, but there's no moral victories. Anybody that watches my channel knows damn well I am hard as hell on this team because I love this team. Otherwise, I wouldn't care, right? I try to find the good things, and I'm telling you guys, week in and week out, when this was with Andrew Thomas, outside of week 1, we are kicking ass at the line of scrimmage. There are little things that have beaten us. Not having a kicker against Washington, right?
Not having Nabers last week. We have Nabers, I think.
Right. Not having Nabers, right? But that's not really a small. But the breakdown in defense on the 3rd and 18, 48-yard touchdown. Like, how does that happen? Like, it's just a mistake. But it cost him. Our kicker missing 2 field goals last week. Dallas we didn't even play a good game. We had tons of drops, couldn't break the end zone. This team really could be 5-1, but they're 2-4. You don't really know what the hell this team is. Can they win? Can they not win? Like Adriana says, you win, you're 3-4, you're tied with the Eagles. Now you're 1-2 in the division, and all the division, outside the other teams in the division have to play each other. They have not played each other yet. So you're in it. You lose, you drop the 2-5, you're probably out of it.
And you're 0-3 in the division.
Right, and you're 0-3 in the division. So the way I look at it is this. I don't like Josh Zudu left tackle. I hate that. I can't say that. Adriana makes a good point. They probably should have been prepared. I feel like year 1, these guys were prepared. Christopher, you and I talked to Patty Train. We talked about how these guys had an A plan, a B plan, a C plan, like all the way through the alphabet. And now it's almost like something goes bad and they can't.
After free agency, Baddog, the way I looked at it was, and obviously it's not that way now that the season started. But when we got Brasillo, I'm like, okay, new offensive line coach. Hopefully he could fix these guys, and he's done a tremendous job. And I said, okay, you went out, you got Illuminor. You hope that Neal could develop on the bench, and if something like this were to happen, the Giants would have enough confidence in the guy that was the 7th overall pick with an improved coaching staff to step in and man the fort. And I think that's the most discouraging thing for me, because I went into the year being like, okay, well, if Illuminor gets hurt or if Thomas gets hurt, if Neal develops a bit, at least we could get by there if this coaching staff improves. But the fact that he's not even seeing the field, that's the most discouraging thing for me. I thought he was going to be the swing tackle.
Yeah, well, I tell you what, I think that at the beginning of the year, there was reports that came out that Carmen Brasilla was not a big fan of Evan Neal.
Yeah.
Thought he was lazy. Thought he was lazy on his rehab. Didn't think he tried very hard. And I think that he's in the doghouse. I think that has a lot to do with, as well as the fact that he sucks. But what I was getting at is, if the Giants drop to 2-7, which is very possible at this point, we know that they have a very tough road to hoe before they get to the Panthers. If they're 2-7, in my opinion, you should play Evan Neal at left tackle. You should see if he can play the position, because at this point, you're probably going to bench Daniel Jones. At this point, you're out of it. It's 2-7. Put him in left tackle, see what you got. Put Drew Lock in there, see what you got. If Evan Neal ever could play left tackle, you have a good swing tackle at this point in Evan Neal, or you could probably trade him and get something for him. Remember when they moved Eric Flowers to guard in Washington, he actually was pretty good, and then he got paid by Miami. So you never know. And then with Drew Lock, it's the same thing. You have nothing to lose at that point. If we're looking 2-7 in the face going into that Panthers game, play Drew Lock. What do you have to lose? Does he suck? Okay, you draft the quarterback. If he ends up really being good, then you go, well, maybe we don't need to draft the quarterback. Maybe we got something there. You just don't know. The Giants are in it's just a weird position, because you see how close they are. It's like that carrot right in front of the horse's face. He just can't grab it. But watching this team dominate the line of scrimmage is something we have not seen in years. Our defense is legit. They lead the league in sacks. Brian Burns, after a slow start, I'm going to give myself credit. I made a video, put him on a milk carton, and said, has anybody seen this man? We have seen him ever since. He has been awesome. Ojulari stepped in and was awesome. Mm-hmm. Dex is Dexter. He's the best interior defensive lineman in the league. I'm excited with this team going in the future, but in the current, it is incredibly frustrating what we are, and I really don't know what the hell they're going to do at left tackle. It's such a major blow to this team. It sucks.
Think back to last. I mean, I hate to talk about positives because, like you said, I like talking about positives, but I don't believe in moral victories. Like you said, in the NFL, there's no moral victories. But the other thing that I think has been really impressive the last 2 weeks that's not getting talked about, because the team lost, because how bad Daniel Jones looked, because Andrew Thomas got hurt, the secondary has been really good the last 2 weeks. You think about the two wide receiving cores this team has gone up against with this young, inexperienced secondary. Deontay Banks has stepped up. Tyler Newbin stepped up. They've gone up against
Drew Phillips. Don't forget our guy, Drew Phillips, baby.
Arguably the two best receiving cores in the NFL. Definitely two of the top 5 or 6. And they've held them in check. So I think there's definitely a lot of positives the last couple weeks with this team. But the most important area, the quarterback, and the fact that we've had injuries is draining the fan base. And it always hurts when you lose. But I definitely think there's a lot of positives the last couple weeks.
Oh, without question. Malik Nabers, obviously. What a beast this kid is. He's unbelievable. Definitely the best wide receiver we've had since Odell Beckham, which Odell Beckham, kind of like the whole Saquon Barkley thing, some people just couldn't let him go. Of course, Beckham did not choose to leave the Giants, which is the big difference to me, is that Beckham was traded. He didn't have control of that. Barkley decided to go to Philadelphia. So I understood people still loving Odell Beckham. Barkley, I get it to a point, but when you go to the Eagles, you can't like the guy. And the reason I say it is this: younger fans haven't seen it. I thought this is how Barry been for a long time. You literally have to be legally old enough to drink to remember the last time the Giants won a Super Bowl. Okay, it was 13 years ago. So I give somebody 8 years old to actually understand what's going on. So all the younger fan base saw was Odell Beckham. It was the one shining light we had on this team, so they loved him. And Barkley, for many years, was the one shining light we had on this team, so it's hard to let them go. But, you got to, at some point, man, you got to let Barkley go. Malik Nabers now gives us another serious offensive weapon, an exciting guy. He's been awesome to watch. He's unbelievable. He's got a good head on his shoulders. What I want to get from you guys is this. We'll start with you, Adriana. Obviously he was concussed. He hasn't played the last 2 weeks. I don't know what his, outlook is this week. I don't know if he's still in concussion protocol or how they're working. What I want to ask you guys is this. There was a lot of talk about him going to a concert and that this was wrong. What a terrible job. That's why he didn't play this week. And it was terrible for a concussion to do that. Adriana, what are your thoughts about Malik Nabers going to a concert? Is this an overreaction or is this legitimate? The fan lash out towards him.
Our fan base is so toxic that they will take anything and
I love
make
this girl already. I love her.
for a bad reason. That's okay. He didn't play on Sunday. He was not advancing before that in order to get to the right place. Okay. Today is the first day that he's in a red jersey and he's out on the field with the team. It literally took almost 3 weeks. So I just think he had a really bad concussion. Do I think he should have gone to a Travis Scott concert or any concert? No. You got to think about the optics. Like, I just think maybe he could have went if he went undercover and people didn't know about it. Sure. But you got to think about it and just know, like, if he had an ankle boot on or a wrist thing, I don't care if you go to concert. The fact that he was in concussion protocol, he goes to this concert that, have lights and the sound is really loud. Like, he was wearing sunglasses. Like, maybe wear earplugs. Maybe he would have gotten a little less shit if he wore earplugs. But what I can't figure out is he went with Isaiah Simmons. And I just think that there's no way that they were not talking about it in the building and no one knew about it. So you're going to tell me that they went to this concert and no one knew beforehand and no one said, listen, Leak, you should think twice about this. You're in concussion protocol. This is not great. Blah, blah, blah. And maybe someone did have that conversation with him. I don't think that they did, but I think it's an overreaction. There is no way that that's the reason why he didn't play on Sunday.
Yeah.
Anthony, what are your thoughts on him going to the concert?
I agree on all points. I think it's a complete overreaction. There's no way that the coaching staff didn't know that he was going if he went with Isaiah Simmons. They absolutely were talking about it. I totally agree with that. And this is another detail that a lot of Giants fans don't seem to realize. He was in the building on Sunday for the Sunday night game. The sound inside of a football stadium for a football game is just as loud as the sound inside of a football stadium for a concert. So if he wasn't cleared to play for that game, but they still let him go to the game, that to me felt like the Giants making a statement. He's allowed to be in the stadium when it's this loud. That concert was not a problem. And I took issue with the way that everybody reacted to Brian Daboll's comment because he said he's going to keep it in-house. But then he was asked, this is the part that everybody leaves out. He was asked, did he violate protocol? Brian Daboll said he did not violate protocol. So if he didn't violate concussion protocol, then that means they felt comfortable with him going to the concert, and they knew that him going to the concert would not affect his concussion, would not severe or worsen the severity of the injury. So, and again, he was at the game on Sunday. It is loud. We've all been to MetLife Stadium. We know how loud it gets. So maybe not as loud as we would like it to be, but that's a whole nother conversation. But I just can't believe how much of an overreaction it truly ended up becoming.
Our fan base, guys, has become like Twitter's become like 1,000 Pat Leonards. I feel every time something like this happens.
Death by 1,000 Pat Leonards.
1,000 death by 1,000 Pat Leonards. Because every time I remember Pat Leonard did this with Saquon during COVID. Saquon, like, he was like hurt and he went there on like a bike or something. Yes. And Pat Leonard made like a huge stink about it. And then he kept talking about it like 2 weeks later, the way that he handled COVID and yada, yada, yada. And the same vibe here, in my opinion, with Malik Nabers. Like, should he have been there? A lot of people talked about how Brian Daboll responded to the question and the body language and everything else. The way that I took that wasn't that he wasn't allowed to go, because I'm sure he was. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been there. It was that he was probably disappointed, going back to what Adriana had to say about the optics, because he knew the 1,000 Pat Leonards on Twitter would flip out and run with it, and it would make the Giants and Nabers look bad. Do I think he didn't play last week because he went to a Travis Scott concert? No, it's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Like, you know what else is on the list of things that you shouldn't do when you're recovering from a concussion? Playing football. So I don't think that a concert prevented him from playing football. So no, I don't think it had anything to do with it. I don't think he was going to play. I think the Giants are being extra cautious with the guy who's supposed to be the diamond treasure of this team for the next 10 years. So I think it's more so to do with that. They're not trying to rush him back out on the field. Yeah.
Like Adriana said, though, she said he would, maybe he went undercover. As we know, when you play in New York, there is no undercover here. You are under the proverbial microscope. Everything you do is magnified here. Everything, especially when you're losing football games, man. If we were 4-2 right now, this probably wouldn't be a big deal. If we were 5-1, it wouldn't be a big deal. But when you're losing, again, they want something to talk about. And when they're not winning, it's hard to talk about positive things. You're not going to see Pat Leonard talk about, hey, the defensive line, the defense leads the league in sacks. And, the offensive line has really improved. And shout out to Carmen Brasilla. Brasilla's been unbelievable. Brian Daboll's stunt double before Ozembic, by the way. And, it's just, it's incredible how Twitter is like that. Sometimes I just like to jump right into the war zone. I just like to just throw myself out there, put a couple things on there, let people have at me because I think it's funny. I actually Twitter's kind of fun. I can't lie. I go in there, just throw some things out there that don't make any sense just to get a reaction because you're going to get one there, especially because there is death by it. I like that, Chris. 1,000 Leonard's on Twitter.
Perfect way to describe Twitter. And also, now I know exactly how you feel about Pat Leonard, and we are on the same page.
Yes. Pat Leonard I remember 3 years ago, Pat Leonard used to be like the outlier. Pat Leonard used to be like the guy that everybody's like, I'm blocking that guy. I'm not listening to that guy. Now I go on Twitter, and I feel like everybody I interact with is like a dummy account of Pat Leonard. Like that's the fan base now. Like 80% of the fan base on Twitter. Now I recognize that Twitter is probably only a small fraction of the Giants fan base. Like when you're on there, you get consumed by it and you're like, do 80% of the Giants fans actually feel this way? No, they don't. But 80% of Giants Twitter does. And 80% of Giants Twitter, in my opinion, has become like Pat Leonard. So you really spoke to me, Adriana, when you said that this fan base is incredibly toxic because I don't hide it. I think Pat Leonard's incredibly toxic. I've had him blocked on Twitter for 4 years. And I think 80% of people align with him.
There's definitely some good trolls on Twitter, though. There's some good Giants trolls that I really, really like. Yeah. There's definitely, I definitely have my favorites without question. Well, we got 20 minutes left or so. So now let's just talk about him. Why the hell not? Because we'll probably talk about him every freaking stream from here on out until he's benched. And that is Daniel Jones. Do you want to talk about toxicity? You want to talk about toxicity in the Giants fan base? So you go on Twitter and mention Daniel Jones one way or the other. One side is going to get you, whether you do it or not. Lord knows I have tried to be as even keel as possible and as honest and unbiased as possible with Daniel Jones. Everybody, I say it all the time, 10 million people saw my draft reaction. I obviously was not happy. So people like, you hated him right from day one. He's a Giant. I'm going to root for him as long as he wears this uniform. I'm going to root for him. But I'll just tell you how in between I am. And this is a hilarious story. I did a video talking about Daniel Jones. One commenter said, you're just a Daniel Jones homer. One guy in the same video said, you're a Daniel Jones hater. So I'm like, well, I must be doing my job right then. Because to me, Daniel Jones, year 6, is what he is. He's going to have a good game. He's going to, look at he turned a corner. And when he turns the corner, he runs right into a freaking brick wall. This is what the guy does all the time. You get your hopes up, and then inevitably he crashes your hopes down. To me, he's not the future of the New York Giants. We saw Joe Shane, Brian Daboll, they wanted to trade up and get a quarterback. And if it wasn't for the first 3 teams in this draft class needing a quarterback, we would have one. I'm glad they didn't reach for J.J. McCarthy. I was never a fan of J.J. McCarthy. Mm-hmm. But I guess this is where I'm going with this. We are picking 9th, hypothetically. I think there's 5 quarterbacks in this draft class that are pretty good. I won't name them right now. I will tell you my favorite is Cameron Ward. Anybody that watches me know I love Cameron Ward. Anthony, we'll start with you. If you're picking 9th, how do you go about this? Are you trading up to get a quarterback? Are you sitting back at 9th? And who is in this draft class? Who's a guy you would want to replace Daniel Jones? If you want to replace Daniel Jones, I'm guessing you do.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
Oh yes. Let's get this over with. Yeah, I would love to replace Daniel Jones. I really wanted to replace him this past offseason. I was hoping somehow, some way they would get the deal done with the Patriots. I was a huge Drake May fan. Alex, my co-host on Fireside Giants, was a huge Jaden Daniels fan. So that's been tough to watch him kind of crumble over the last few weeks as he's had his tremendous success with the Commanders. And then when you're looking at the future here, I always find these conversations really difficult to have so far in advance because, yeah, sure, maybe we're picking 9 to 10, somewhere in that range. Maybe we think now's the time to go ahead and get a quarterback. But to say trade up or trade down or stick and pick, I really can't tell because even the LSU quarterback right now, he probably has what, a third round.
I watched that game. He looked good last year.
He looks really good. He has probably what, like a 3rd round draft stock by the end of it, could be top 10. So you just don't know. And that's where it's like, it's just such a long season, college season and NFL season, and so much can change on a week to week. Some weeks I see, Shedeur Sanders is a lock, number 1 overall pick. Then I see, he's undraftable. You can't even take him. It's like, okay, by the time we get to April, everything is going to be different. And so I can't really throw names out there or say who I want them to draft. I love Cam Ward. I actually loved Cam Ward prior to this past draft when he initially declared. Did a lot of film work on him for Fireside Giants, and I was enamored by him. I thought he was going to be a mid-round steal wherever he went. He ended up betting on himself going to Miami. Now I think he will be a top 10 pick. And if the Giants have the opportunity to draft him, I would love to see that happen. But at the same time, this is a draft class where we are talking about it's not the same caliber of quarterbacks that it was this past draft. No. That's going to be a fact, no matter what happens in this long season. So then it becomes a conversation of, do you want to force the quarterback pick just because you're like we want to rip the Band-Aid off and get over with the Daniel Jones era. And I understand that. And Giants fans are going to be really loud in the offseason about that. But you have to be careful not to take the quarterback just because you feel like you need to take a quarterback. Because for me, I think that's what happened when the Giants drafted Daniel Jones.
That's exactly
I think they felt like they have to take a quarterback this offseason. Let's force it. Let's take the one that we like the most. I don't like when a team is in that position. I think a team like what Atlanta did, they got a lot of flack for taking Michael Penix, but in the long run, we've seen it with Jordan Love. We've seen it in the past. When you just take the prospect that you love because you have the opportunity, those are the prospects that end up panning out for you. You have a plan for them, you know their skill set, and you know that they're a sound talent. When you just force the quarterback, though, that's usually when teams run into trouble. So, again, I know I kind of danced around your question. It's just so far in advance. I can't give you a definitive one. I want to draft a quarterback, absolutely. Just can't say who, and I can't say how.
Yeah, 2 things real quick. Number one, I think Joe Schoen has shown that he will not reach for a quarterback because he could have done it this year. I think that shows.
I agree to an extent, and I'll explain when I talk. But thus far, I agree with you. Yes.
And then, of course, I loved Michael Penix. I was the biggest Michael Penix guy. I just worried about him being a lefty with Evan Neal. If I knew we were getting Jermaine, or how good Illuminor was going to be over there, I wouldn't have worried as much. But I loved Michael Penix. That was my guy for years. Even in Indiana, I loved him. So I really, man, I don't know what the hell to do with the quarterback position. Adriana, tell me what the hell we're doing at the quarterback position.
It's such a cluster. It really is, because I agree with everything that Anthony said. Like, so much is going to change from now until April. We don't know what we're going to end up drafting, who's going to be where. What I will say is I do have faith that they're not going to reach for a quarterback. They didn't for JJ McCarthy. I don't think they're going to do it this year, regardless of what happens with Jones and Locke and DeVito, which I don't really think that any of them are going to be here next year. But I do think that they will draft a quarterback regardless, because I believe that even though those quarterbacks are not to the same caliber as this past year's quarterback class, I think that likely any one of them is better than what we currently have. And you pair that with the fact that Brian Daboll is such a good quarterback coach, and even Shea Tierney has done a nice job. The 2 of those guys, I feel like, let's say they get Jalen Milroe at 9 or whatever it is, I think that Daboll is capable of taking that quarterback and making him better than whatever his stock or whatever it is at the time that they draft him. And I was big on Jaden Daniels. He was my guy. I was like, they have to do whatever they can to get him, love him. And I think that Jalen Milroe is good. I have my concerns about the fact that he's an Alabama quarterback, but I know there was a lot of concerns about Caleb Williams being a USC quarterback, and he's doing just fine.
And
so
CJ Stroud being an Ohio State
Caleb Williams is not a USC quarterback. He's an Oklahoma quarterback that transferred with Lincoln Riley to USC. I'm not going to talk. I could do a whole hour on Caleb Williams. I was the biggest Caleb Williams stan. Still am. Love the guy. I'm a Sooner fan, so obviously I have my reasons. But if you watch Caleb Williams play, my God, the guy is just.
Oh, he's insane. He's insane. Yeah. Looked great at London last week.
Oh, my God. He's so freaking good. Chris, fix it.
Well, first I got to know where we're picking. And first I got, you got to give me a little more time to look at
I
actually like Shedeur Sanders. I don't think we're going to be in a place to take him, though. When I've watched him, that one throw, I was blown away. When he made the throw to tie the game to send it to overtime, it was like an Aaron Rodgers-like throw. But I don't think we're going to be picking that high. I do think in the end he's going to be the first quarterback off the board. But who knows? Maybe I'll be dead wrong. Maybe it will.
The Underwear Olympics change things too.
They change a lot of things. But at the end of the day, I agree with what you said, and I actually like that about Joe Schoen. that he has not forced a quarterback pick, because that is the dumbest thing a general manager could do. But do I think it's possible this year he does?
His job's on the line.
I think it's possible, because Joe Shane is going to feel the pressure now, because now you have nowhere really to turn. You needed that number one wide receiver. He was clearly the best guy in the draft. You got that. You needed to fix the offensive line. When healthy, you kind of fixed it to a certain extent. If there's a quarterback there that Dable could mold, I think he's going to take him. Like, let's put it this way. If we already had Nabers on our roster going into last year's draft, I think there's a good chance he would have taken J.J. McCarthy, or he would have taken Michael Penix. He would have said, we have the pieces in place. Dable can now maximize this player. So I'm definitely leaning he's going to go quarterback, even if he's not head over heels in love with the prospect, because I think he's going to have more confidence now that he has the roster that's going to have the ability to maximize the position. So that's where I'm at with it. I'm strongly leaning he's going quarterback. The only other alternative, unless Jones turns it around, and I'm open to it. We got 11 more games. Maybe he does play well enough where you say, okay, he could continue to be the bridge. We could keep building the team. If the Giants win 8 games, 9 games, and they're not in a position to draft a quarterback, I'm not completely ruling that out. It's possible. But more than likely, I think there's 2 avenues we're going down. We're either drafting a quarterback, or we're going to sign a stopgap, a Kerry Collins-like move like we did back in 99 that was that bridge for the next 2 or 3 years. That's where I think it's going, one way or the other. I think we're going to bring in a vet, or we're drafting a quarterback. But I'm definitely more so in line to thinking we're drafting a quarterback next year early on. And if you like a quarterback, you don't sit at 9 and wait if we're picking 9. If you like a Milroe, or if you like a Cam Ward, you're not going to risk somebody jumping you and getting that guy. So I expect him to trade up if he wants a quarterback in this year's draft, if he's picking in the spot that you suggested.
Yeah. Hypothetical.
Yeah,
I never thought of it. Oh, go ahead.
If I can jump in real quick, I want to say something to, whether we're predicting whether or not Joe Shane is going to take a quarterback. I have to imagine he is. And this has been my one flaw in his draft strategy, is that he does draft for need. So if he feels like quarterback is the need, he's going to go ahead and draft a quarterback, whether he should or shouldn't, right? That's when it's going to get dicey, because is he going to reach on a talent? I thought that in this last draft, he crushed it. Joe Shane found talent in pretty much every single round. Like, I like all of those draft picks. Right? Yeah, and they're all playing at a tremendously high level. But he was drafting for need. And even on Hard Knocks, that was shown. Like, the Giants had a plan, like, okay, we need a quarterback. If we don't get a quarterback, okay, we're going to go receiver. In the second round, they're like, we need a cornerback. If we don't get that, I guess we can go safety. But it's always very intentional that he takes a player at a position of need with every pick. And that hasn't always worked out, like with Evan Neal. You could argue Evan Neal was the best player on the board. You could argue that he wasn't, but that was a pick for need. I think Josh Azita was also a pick for need. They needed a guard in that class. Drafting for need can help you in the short run, but it also can hurt you in the long run, because you might reach on a player's talent, draft him too early, and he doesn't develop the way that you want him to, and you missed out on other talent on the board. So that's my chief concern here, is the Giants are going to put themselves in a position once again, like they were in 2019, where their biggest need, paramount to all others, is quarterback. They don't have a choice, have to take a quarterback, and then they're in a dicey situation. So whether they draft a quarterback or not, I would like to see them sign somebody in free agency first, so at least they can have the option to punt on taking a quarterback. Say the guy that they don't like is there. They've got their board. It's 1, 2, 3. Okay, well, 1 and 2 are gone. Now 3 is there, but we don't really feel that strongly about 3. I don't want to have to take him.
That's what the Vikings did this year. They signed Sam Darnold, and they said, if McCarthy falls to us, we'll take him. So
I would also argue that they could do both. Like, let's say Drew Lock ends up playing this year and he ends up playing okay, and they feel like he's a good veteran. They could still draft a quarterback, and maybe they just don't trade up for one. Maybe they get someone in a second rounder, like the amount of people who were saying towards the end of the draft last year, just take Spencer Rattler, just take Joe Milton. At least we have a quarterback. They can always do that. I think they have around 7 picks for next year. So for the most part, they're in a way better spot now than they were last year when it comes to depth. There's obviously positions of need outside of the quarterback that they should take with those draft picks, but I think that they can do both. They can do what Atlanta did, right? I mean, I would never sign Daniel Jones to another 4 years, but I use Atlanta as the example. They signed him to a 4-year deal, and they draft Penix. So they can, in theory, sign a Drew Lock for 2 years.
Jones on the roster for another year and draft a quarterback. Yeah, they could.
Right.
Yeah.
And then you've got a young guy to develop. And in a year or two, you see he's not developing at the rate, and you don't want to put him in for the bridge guy, then or maybe you develop him enough to where you trade him and you get a quarterback a year or two later.
Right.
I feel like there's always going to be that type of option.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I would say wouldn't rule out that they could do both next year, which would be interesting.
I would never, I never in a million years that I think I'd be saying this. I depending on where they draft, I honestly think this is where I think we are. We still have some holes to fill. I don't think there's any question. You still want to work on the trenches. You could use another defensive end, another defensive tackle, another offensive lineman. Obviously, you would like to get some insurance for Andrew Thomas just in case he can't stay healthy. How adverse would you guys be to this? Because I've heard these Matt Stafford rumors. I don't understand Matt Stafford at all. I don't get this at all. But I do think we are a quarterback away from really being a contender. And you get a good quarterback and you build some more around him. Sam Darnold. I swear to God, I never thought I'd be saying this because
than Matt Stafford.
because for years I've said Sam Darnold stinks, but Chris knows this. Before this year started, I said that's a fantasy sleeper, man. If you're ever going to take Sam Darnold, if he's ever going to produce, it's this year. He has played awesome. Depending on where they draft, you never know with your draft. You never know. You could take the biggest prospects. Look at Trevor Lawrence. I mean, we thought he can't miss, and he's missing. You know what Daniel Jones is. You don't know what that draft quarterback is. You have no idea. He could be Jaden Daniels. He could be Trevor Lawrence. You really don't know. Chris and I did a little study on this. It was like 70% of the top 10 quarterbacks drafted in the last 10 years have failed. I literally would sign Sam Darnold. You cut Daniel Jones, you're saving $20 million. I would literally sign Sam Darnold to a 4-year deal. And to Adriana's point, at that point, you probably could take another quarterback to sit behind him just in case. But if you have a guy like Sam Darnold and he comes in and he plays as well as he is in Minnesota, and you have Malik Nabers, you have Wan'Dale Robinson, your line is way better, and your defense is really good, and you're just missing that quarterback, and you really think that this guy can put you over the top, you know who he is, you know what he brings, that could really make a big difference, in my opinion. I'm not saying Joe Shane would do that, but you can't imagine that Minnesota's going to give Darnold all this money for 4 years and then still sit McCarthy. Now they could sign him and trade him, but everything. Darnold's 28 years old going into next. He's 27 now. He'll be 28 next year. I don't know, man. Call me crazy.
Here's what I'll say about Darnold.
Maybe I'm reaching for a quarterback. Maybe I'm just reaching.
Here's what I'll say about Darnold. I'm not against it. If they would have brought him in this offseason in a similar capacity, if they were in a situation where they could have done it, that makes sense. I feel like with Darnold, you're buying high at this point because Darnold, if he continues to do this, and I think he's going to, he's got all the pieces in place in Minnesota. There's no reason to think he's not going to continue to play like a top 7-8 quarterback in the league. I mean, he's played great the first 5-6 weeks. I think his market's going to be incredibly high. I think he's going to get a big contract. We're talking $40 million a year plus.
I don't know. Give it to him.
If he could continue. But
I think the Vikings are going to give it to him, though.
Yeah. If you're the Vikings, why? Just because you drafted JJ who's coming off an ACL, why?
Right.
Why would you risk that?
I think the more realistic option for the Giants to end up landing from the Vikings would end up being JJ McCarthy. The Giants did a lot of pre-draft work on him. They did like him. They had him in for a meeting on Easter Sunday. Like, there was definitely indications that they liked him to some extent. If the Vikings are going to move on from one of those quarterbacks, I think they could still get a second-round pick out of JJ McCarthy. Meanwhile,
I would do that
quarterback in Sam Darnold. If you could take a second-round flyer on McCarthy, I liked McCarthy. I know a lot of people didn't.
I did too.
I did.
Yeah.
So I'd be open to that. But, we have to see how the market shapes out. Which quarterback does hit the market, which quarterback hits the trade market as well. But I think McCarthy would actually be the sleeper there.
Yeah, it could be. It sucks. Every year, it's not even Halloween, and we're talking about the draft. This is the life of a New York Giants fan. It really, really.
Maybe we'll beat the Eagles and we'll be partying next week.
Isn't that crazy, though? Isn't that amazing if we win Sunday, how much everything changes for one game? And call me crazy.
The NFL, man. People like, sometimes, and I'm sure you guys get it too. They say, oh, you're a flip-flopper. Oh, you change your opinion on this. You change your opinion on that. That's the NFL. The NFL is a week-to-week league. Your opinion on the team one football game is equivalent to like 20 baseball games. Like, your opinion can change so drastically in 1 week. That's just the life of the NFL. It's chaos. And if the Giants beat the Eagles next week, suddenly you're like, wait, we're 3-4.
That's what I mean.
We're out of first place.
Yeah.
The offense all of a sudden looks good now that Malik Nabers is back. Like, things change.
Yeah.
So, I always take it week by week with the Giants. But
you have to take it week by week. Look at college football. What do you think? You think they do those rankings for their health week by week? Of
Yeah.
course, things change week to week. Like you said, the equivalent of one football game is 10 baseball games. We play 17 games. Baseball plays 162.
Yeah.
So every game, you live and die with every game. And yes, one game can really it's insane how much one game means. And especially if you beat the Eagles, because
Well, if you beat the Eagles suddenly, guys, you look at it, you're like, wait, we could beat the Steelers. And then we
Yeah.
could beat Carolina.
we could have beat
So,
everybody but Minnesota this year.
so things could change. Now, what do I think is going to happen? I think Josh Azudu is going to get smoked, and Daniel Jones is probably going to get knocked off on a stretcher. But that's why we watch on Sunday. We watch for the surprise, and we see what happens.
Let's hope that doesn't happen.
I hope not, but I'm scared.
I would like to see Jalen Hurts get smoked. That'd be nice.
For Lawrence.
Yeah, Dexter Lawrence needs to eat. I literally want, when they pick Saquon Barkley up off the ground, I literally want his body imprinted into MetLife Stadium. I can't stand the Philadelphia Eagles. Oh my God. One of these shows, I think we should just do an hour of hating on. That wouldn't be enough. I swear to God. With that said, our hour is up. Really appreciate you guys joining the chat. In the chat, appreciate it. We had over 100 viewers at first initial stream. That's pretty damn good. Make sure you guys subscribe to the channel. Tell all your friends about it. Anthony, Adriana, Chris, thank you. This has been awesome. I look forward to next week, and hopefully next week we are talking about a W. That'd be awesome.
Yes.
So with that said, guys, we're gonna get out of here. Chris, go Mets, and I will see you guys next week.
Let's go.
Let's
Thank
go.
you.
We go.
Giants.